Good. So yeah, let's dive right in. Yeah, hi, I already said a few words about what I'm doing in my regular life. I am Svea Eckert. I'm an investigative journalist. My focus is on technology, data, also social engineering tactics. You can follow me on a variety of platforms, and I also host a very nice podcast. She Likes Tech. It's a NDR podcast where we always talk about cyber topics and also about the issues, women in tech. But today we want to dive into research I did a few years ago and which is still very interesting and active until today. And you will learn a little bit about social engineering tactics and and also what massive amount of personal data is shared in the web and about the commercial surveillance infrastructure in the internet. So I did not want to tell you a lot more. I just want to dive into it right now. And to do so, I will share with you a very small piece of interview I did with a woman. She is from the Deutsche Bundestag. And I did an interview with her about her data. And that was her reaction when I entered the room and showed her the data I had obtained from her. Let's... Okay, so this was in German, but she says you can see everything, and this is very bad. So what did I show her? I showed her browsing history. Everybody of you have a browsing history. It's much more sensitive and personal that you in the first moment think of. What you can see her here is every click she did in 2016 in August. You can see on the very left side, you can see the date and the timestamp, and you can also see the URL. I asked her if I'm allowed to show this in a presentation like this, and she said it's okay. So I do not breach her privacy here. So what you can see is that she gets up quite early at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing she's doing is checking her bank account. You can see banking Postbank. And this goes on until later, where then she's also doing, there you can see it, I highlighted for you, banking Postbank, Schwäbisch Hall, she's checking her bank account. And then later you can see, and I will take you on a little scroll journey. So it was for me like this, when I got the data in my hands, you can see what a person is doing in the internet for every second. And here she's doing her Steuererklärung, her tax declaration. This is what people in Germany are doing in August. And you can see every folder, every formula she's clicking on. Very, very personal and sensitive data. And to emphasize even more how sensitive this browsing history, this click data is, I show you this one. There she was looking for medication, Tibonin. Tibonin is a medicine which you are using when you are suffering from very high stress symptoms like tinnitus. And this was her reaction when I showed her, or when I asked her about it, like, what did you search there?
Ich weiß gar nicht, in welchem Zusammenhang ich dieses Theonin mir da angeguckt habe. Ist nicht schön, sowas nachträglich zu lesen. Vor allen Dingen verknüpft mit dem eigenen Namen, ne?
Yeah, she was definitely not amused when we confronted her with her own data. Sorry. Okay, enough of the introduction now. I will now give you the research insights. Let's talk about the way how I got this sensitive data in my hands, and I can spoil you a little bit and say it was not a Trojan or something, or I did not buy it on the black market. No, no, no. So first step for every action, and I think in journalism sometimes we are a little bit like investigators. You have to identify the company or the person you want to know more about. And in my case, it was this. As I told you, the data was not from some crazy black market. It was from the real market. There is a marketing technology. There are marketing companies out there, and they are selling this data. This was, it is from 2016 today. Yeah, and this is here's the data part. These are the companies they are acquiring the data from apps, from browsing extensions, from everywhere. They are buying or licensing this data, and then they are enhancing it, and some of them sell it. This is the source of all of the data. So this is the technology landscape from today. So the slide you saw before was from 2016. It's 4 years ago. And today you see the universe has even grown much, much more bigger. So for me, in the end, it's not so important to know all the names of these companies, but some of them are only collecting the data. They are not selling it because, of course, this data, it's like that oil, it's like diamonds. But there are a few where you can also buy this very sensitive data. And I wanted to contact some of these companies. And of course, like in every investigation, it's not only a Google research, but I had some sources who are working in this industry, who are working in these businesses, and they helped me a little bit to identify the right companies and also how I talk the talk, what I had to do, what I had to say. Because obviously, when I had called them as a journalist as, hey, this is Svea Eckert from NDR, would you please show me your very personal sensitive data? Many companies would have never answered me, or they would have said, no, of course, we never would do this. But I thought, okay, maybe they would tell this, they would tell another story to a suitable persona. So I created a false persona. This was Anna Rosenberg. It just, came over me, this persona. This is me, with the glasses and a little bit shorter hair, but it's me. And I also invented a company, Meets Technology. You can see it here on the slide. This is the real LinkedIn profile I had in these days. And the important thing for me was where this company was located, and it was in Tel Aviv in Israel. Okay, I like Tel Aviv, I like Israel, but this was not the reason. The reason was that Tel Aviv is very known for this good startup atmosphere, and that many startups are there, and that also many people are working with data. And so I thought, okay, Tel Aviv is maybe better than Berlin, where everybody know, the Germans and the data protection. And I thought, okay, I better place it out where and not in Germany. So this is a little bit, have a closer look. Then I also had, I don't speak Hebrew, so I only speak German and English a little bit. But I thought, okay, maybe when you have origins, then probably people would understand why I maybe speak only German. So over a couple of weeks, I collected some friends in LinkedIn, which is very easy. The first step if you want to have a credible profile, then you first collect friends. And I also created a website. This is only stock footage and some marketing, blah, blah. It took me a couple of hours. The much more important thing is when you do something like this, some social engineering operation, is that you have to create a story, that you have to create an image of a person and a company. And I think this is the real work behind such an operation, that you really have to think it through. So this is what we did. And I said, okay, we are a startup and I'm a senior consultant. And we are looking for raw data from the customer journey, because we have a big customer behind, which I cannot tell the name because it's very, very confidential. And for this customer, we want to do some very magic AI thing. I cannot tell because I'm only a stupid consultant. And this is the reason why we need this raw data. And this was the story I told on the phone. I even did a careers page, and I ended up also getting candidates after a couple of weeks. And I wrote a big manual. You can imagine it like the map you see in front of a like Lord of the Rings or other fantasy novels, where you have in the beginning, where you have the map with all the mountains, and where you can see exactly how everything is, how everything looks. So I scripted everything around this company, what was my favorite food, where I had studied, even what I see when I look out of the window, because I thought maybe I will call other companies in Israel and they ask me, where do I have lunch? So I wanted to have an answer. What my friends are, I imagined everything. Anna, of course, got a phone. She got an email address. Yeah. And then I did a lot of calls. And yeah, invent a story. This is it. Yeah. And it took me 6 weeks of many, many emails, phone calls. And I got access. So there was one company. They gave me a 40 days trial access for 3 million German internet users, clickstream data from 1 month. This is the browsing histories. This is a little bit more info about the data set. These were a lot of URLs in not good, very good anonymized. Then you had domains and 3 million users in the end. So what did we do next in our research? We wanted to de-anonymize the data, or we wanted to prove that this data, like a browsing history, is very easy to de-anonymize. So there are different ways how you can do this. I will show you at first the easy way. You have on the one side, you have an identification feature, like a name, for example. This is public data. And on the other side, you have a user URL. And in this URL or in these URLs, you find this identification feature. And then in the end, you can combine, or you can connect the 2 points from the data set and the public data. I will show you, it's really easy. So here you have the URL. When I look my Twitter analytics page, then I have the URL, and you see my name is written in the URL. And then I can find my name in the URL, which I have in the data set. So this is, I would say, instant de-anonymizing. And this is what we basically did for this research, because we did not want to de-anonymize the whole data set. We did not want to know, from this 3 million Germans, we did not want to know everybody's browsing history. We only want to make a point. And this was that you can de-anonymize people, and we especially were looking for politicians, policemen, judges, for important persons to make our point. And this is why we use this easy method. But I want to show you that you can do this on a much more bigger scale. And we didn't do it because we did not need it, but it's possible. And this is, I think this is the more scary or interesting part, is when you do this, a little bit more sophisticated. And it was first used and described in 2008, as you can see here in the paper. It was a study where students from University of Texas, they anonymized a large data set with Netflix user data. How does this work? I show you. On the left side, you have our data set with the insufficient anonymized data, and on the right side, you have the public data. So where you have the important and unique identification feature, for example, the name of the person. What you do is you extract the public data from the person. This could be the whole Twitter feed, for example, or this could be recommendations for restaurants, for example, where you use when you use your real name, or on YouTube. Some people, when they do their video playlists, then they use their real name and then they recommend videos. So then you can extract these URLs, and then you can combine it with your data set. So I will give you a short example with Twitter, because with Twitter it's easy because you can use the API. So you can use the Twitter API to retrieve tweets from a relevant period of time, extract all URLs from the tweets and resolve the domains. And then you can run the algorithm with your data set, with the generated data points, and then you can match the two persons from two different data sets. This is, I credited my colleague Andreas Davis for this, because he's a data scientist and he did this also, or he tested this method also with our research. So important, this is thinkable with many publicly available data sets, like this YouTube song list, like Google Maps location recommendations, and many, many more. To sum it up, to put it all together, correct anonymization is very hard and nearly impossible, in my opinion. Two ways to de-anonymize data are instant via usernames and handles, or big scale via combinatoric. Yeah, this is what I just summed up. Why does this all matter? Yeah, I show you. I told you already that we also looked after the keyword police. So here we have a policeman, and I know this because he used Google Translate. And with Google Translate, this, I think it's not working anymore, but in Google Translate, it was like when you put down the things in the translate box, then everything got written in the URL. And this was what he wanted to know. He was investigation, some kind of cyber fraud. And then he wanted to translate from German to English. Everything was pushed in the URL, and we found it, and we got, of course, his first name, last name, etc., even his phone number. We called him, but he did not want to be mentioned in any publication. So that's the reason why I deleted everything, or why I blanked everything else out here. Good, yeah. This is why this is important. When you go further down in his browsing history, you can see, of course, all of his hobbies, but also his little imperfections of his life, everything what he was looking for as a cyber cop. Two more, even more severe examples. Next one, this one is another person who had stored all his financial information in a Google Drive box, not secured with a password. Don't do that. It was a manager from a very big company in Germany. We also called him, but he, of course, did not want to be shown publicly. So this is also the reason why I blanked everything out. And this is the last example. This is it's a snippet from a German judge. Browsing history. He was also awaiting a child, and and also was consuming a lot of porn. And I think it was nothing illegal, but it was heavily, of course, embarrassing when this data got leaked, or when this data got hacked, or I think it could be very compromising for a judge or a politician when this data is out there. So to close my talk and probably satisfy your curiosity, who was behind all this, who collected all the data from this innocent people. Yeah, we found it. In the end, it was a simple browser add-on. It was ironically the browser add-on Web of Trust. People installed it because they wanted to, for their surf experience to be safe. And they were collecting all the URLs and licensing and selling it behind people's back. It was even written in the privacy policy. Nobody reads that. It is written in there that web pages visited and timestamps of the visits, that they are shared with third parties. Even browsing information is shared with third parties. And you see nobody, of course, looked at it. Yeah, what are the learnings? What probably can we take home from this research? Browsing security, yeah, is very important because in my opinion, I think everybody has something to hide, and even if it is his private or personal life. You can use Tor browser, you can use VPN, of course. And if you use browser plugins, then double check if they don't collect your browsing history data in the back and selling it. Or sometimes VPNs even do this too. So also with VPNs, always look that you use a good VPN which is really trustworthy. Use secure communication. Of course, for me, today Messenger is the tool I'm using because I feel the most secure. And of course, cloud computing, always an issue. Yeah, everybody has something to hide, like this one. De-anonymization is possible because you have this lot of private data and obtainable data, like the Twitter API. You have the public data, like the Twitter API. And then on the other hand, you have this very sensitive and private data, which is not good anonymized or which is not anonymized at all. And it's obtainable. You can get it for a trial as a fake persona. You can combine these things, and then then everybody is in the open. And in the end, for me, it was a very big learning how powerful social engineering is, and that I did not have to pay anything for that. They gave it as a free trial for 4 weeks. They gave this data to a fake persona. So yeah, social engineering is a powerful tool. Big thanks also to my colleagues who helped me and then and presented it. You can also watch the research if you want. The link it's still in the web. And yeah, of course, I will be there for questions, and I'm really happy if you tune in to our podcast, She Likes Tech. And I hope you like my presentation.
Svea, thank you so much. This is such a cool thing. So even using encryption would not prevent these attacks, right? Because this was in the metadata.
Yes, and it was directly collected in your browser, and this was the problem. But I think a VPN would protected you, because then we only would have seen the domain name from the VPN, and then we had one person who did he did all his porn consumption with the VPN, so we only saw the VPN and then all the other stuff. But the VPN protected him from the browsing.
Yeah, but how many of us, how many end users use VPN at all? What is VPN? It's not so trivial. So what you are saying, that's all good recommendations, what you said, that you should encrypt and you should use encrypted chats and protected software. But actually, in this case, this is really difficult, because these are just, you just analyze the URLs, and this is all metadata. Preventing this is really, really difficult. I find it super cool. So that essentially means that the users should be very careful with what they install on their computer, which extensions they install, and who reads the small letters.
Yes, I was really surprised about how many people are using how many browsing extensions, because this was also how we found out that it was a browsing extension. So we de-anonymized a few people, and then we called them and we met them in person, of course, before filming. Then we asked them, how many browsing extension and which one do you use? Can you write it down? And this was many
And they all
people.
had.
Yeah, many people are using like 6 or 10 browsing extensions. And in the end, this was also a way how we found out which one collected all the data, because we had some kind of live access to the data. And then we created a website and we installed all the browsing extensions. And then we visited always the website and de-installed the browsing extensions and looked on the other side when we would vanish from the monitoring, from the surveillance screen. And this was how we found out.
Okay.
It
Do they still exist, this extension?
Yeah, I think so. It was.
Guys, be careful about installing extensions, and especially about this extension, because it is really.
So Mozilla and Google, they banned it from the store for a while. But I think they got back because they wrote it more clearly and obviously in their privacy protection headline. But it's also, I think it's written on Wikipedia right now that this browsing extension is malicious. But I think, the browsing extensions, they are so many and they are so easy to create.
Right.
So for me,
Right.
I don't use browsing extension only if they are from a really trustworthy source, or if they are open source, then I use browsing extensions, but I never install any YouTube downloader, super converter stuff. No, nothing.
Yeah, I guess one of the solutions would be also to use anonymous browsing, right? Anonymous browser. Yeah, that would solve the problem. And so here, Svea did a research, but you can imagine that criminals, when they collect this, they sell these databases on darknet markets, and there are many databases which are being sold. So it could be that what you researched and investigated and found, this is being sold there, so people are forever doomed. We actually have a lot of questions from our audience. I have so many questions because I find it really exciting, your research. But I'll start. So one question was, how did you know to start with this research? How did you know that there was this problem? How did you get to even thinking to go and research this direction?
I had a source. And this is I would say, this is the solution to many big researchers you see maybe on television or newspaper. Often it is not told. We also did not put it into our publication that it was a source. So we had a source, a guy who came to me and tipped me off and told me, hey, you can't, because he bought the data by himself. And this was also the reason why he did not want to be mentioned at all. And so he tipped me off and said, you cannot imagine, I have a startup, I wanted some analytics data, I had some money, I bought it, and you cannot imagine what is in there. And I know you're a data protection journalist, so please research this. And this was, this was the tipping point, and then I started.
Sources is really good for researchers. How can we find such sources?
It was really luck. I was at a conference and sat down, had a coffee, and then I got into conversation, and then he came around with this. So and this is, it's not the first time this happened to me. So nearly all the big researchers I have done in the past started like this.
We have another question from our publicum. Did the people you call actually knew what browsing extensions they had? Because most people wouldn't even know what browser extension is.
Yeah, it was like this. Some of them did not know what a browsing extension is. And then it was sometimes we visited them and then we took a screenshot, or I directed them via phone, like click that, look here, make a screenshot, tell me, I will write it down. And So yeah, it was a really complicated process to get from, I don't know, 15 or 20 people. First of all, imagine you got called in the evening. Hello, I'm a journalist. I have your data. We also had, of course, it happened often that people just hang up, or we wrote an email from NDR email address like, hello, we are from NDR, we have your data. People did not respond, and we had to go via Xing or LinkedIn so that they see my profile and know. Yeah, and I think this is also, if you are an investigator, it's sometimes also not so easy to contact people because people think you are a hacker. And on one hand, I think they are right, because you have to be careful who you answer to.
Yeah, so such investigative research is super important. But how would people that want to research something like this, just the normal people who understand a little bit technology and so, how can they do this? And social engineering, for instance, is illegal, right? So how do you make this? How do you do this? How do you go about this while keeping it on the legal side, being protected from potential legal problems?
Yes, I really have to admit that I was very nervous at this research, and when I tell it now, it sounds a little bit like fun, but it was not so funny in this time, because I had these two personas, like my journalistic me, and I also had this second persona, this marketing persona, and she also lived with me, and so I talked also to a friend of mine from the police and asked him, okay, what are covered investigators do? How do they protect themselves from the research? So this is just the emotional side. You have really to get over this. But from the legal side, I did this for NDR and ARD, and they have really good legal department. And I would not say I called them daily, but I was in very close contact from the first day of the idea of the research. And they gave me good advice. How far could I go? What would be when we go in front of a court? What would be okay, and what is too far? My biggest concern was that what if somebody was dealing with drugs or watching child pornography? What would we do if we saw something like this, like a criminal act in the data? Luckily, I talked to our legal advisor, and he told me we will see then. But luckily, we didn't. So I think most people are not criminals. They just have a private life.
Yeah. So we have another question that someone saw that by Miss Wilms, DuckDuckGo was used, and does that help?
No, of course not, because it was collected in the browser. So it does not matter for this kind of spying. It does not matter which browser you are using. The data is sucked out of your browser. So it did not help.
Any other questions? So guys, keep in mind, you want to do such research, you need to have a LinkedIn profile, collect friends in LinkedIn, create a story with answers for everything, and use the services of a legal department of NDR. Very important.
I'm very grateful for the for my station, who is supporting my research very well.
Okay, so thank you so much for such an exciting talk, for these insights, for your answers.